Welcome to this episode of our special series, 7 Minutes with Vivek Sood, with Supreme Court senior advocate and country's top legal mind, the man who coined the expression, the fundamental right to internet. Today we'll discuss the subject of murders that look like suicides. Welcome to the show, sir. Sir, straight to the first question. In the way you deal in the courts day in and day out, do you also come across cases of murders that look like suicides? Please tell us about such cases.
Now, when you look at case law, that is precedents, our legal system heavily relies upon precedents apart from the statutory law. We cite precedents in the court to support the argument. Judges also rely upon precedents to pass judgments. There have been several cases where homicides or murders were made to look like suicides. Especially these kinds of cases are those where murders are committed in the confines of a home, especially of married women who are tortured within the confines of the matrimonial home. And in many cases, I have found that murders were made to appear as suicides. Because in a matrimonial home, in a closed home, you will never have eyewitnesses. The eyewitnesses will be the residents of that home. Now, in most of these cases, those residents would be involved in such crimes. So you will not find eyewitnesses in such cases. Now, there have been cases where the married woman was found dead under mysterious circumstances, and the inmates of the home called it a case of suicide. But on an in-depth investigation, it was found to be a case of murder. So the criminal justice system does have such cases where homicides are made to appear as suicides by the accused who want to get away from the crime.
Are there other type of cases?
Most of these cases which I have read about are of married women who were murdered within the confines of a home. But having said this, there could be other cases as well. But most of these cases are those where married women were killed within the confines of the matrimonial home, and the case was made to appear as that of a suicide.
Okay. So, sir, what are the ways of finding out such cases?
As I said earlier, in such cases, you don't have eyewitnesses. So these cases heavily depend upon circumstantial evidence. Now, some of the pieces of circumstantial evidence that can be relied upon by the prosecution to nail the accused and to haul them and prosecute them for murder. First of all, the cause of death is important. How did the death occur? Secondly, what could be the motive behind a suicide? Now, if if there is no motive for a suicide, if there is no inclination behind a suicide. After all, suicides are not common and they are not committed commonly by people. Suicides are committed for grave reasons. Now, if those reasons are absent and the inmates are not able to satisfactorily explain the circumstances surrounding the death of the deceased, of the victim, the case is converted into a case of murder. Now, heavy onus lies on the inmates to explain such deaths that happen under mysterious circumstances. They must give a plausible explanation as to the cause of death. And if they are unable to do so, and the cause of death appears to be of homicide, then a case of murder is made out. Now, even in cases of suicide by hanging, it could be a case of murder.
Right.
A person can be killed and then hung to make it appear to be a case of suicide. So, apart from the circumstantial evidence, you have several forensic tools to find out the time of death, the real cause of death. The cause of death could be poisoning or strangulation. And to make it appear to be a case of suicide, the body is just hung to the ceiling fan. And then, what is the weight of the body? How high is the ceiling fan? So, there are so many circumstances from which it can be inferred that it is a case of homicide and not suicide.
Okay. Does the truth get revealed in such cases?
That's a good question. Investigation of a crime is done by humans, after all. Whether you follow the scientific approach or you go deep into the case, after all, investigation of a crime is a human act. You don't have the Almighty coming to investigate the case. So there are subjective elements in investigation. There may be some cases, there would be some cases where the accused may get away with a murder, making it appear to be a case of suicide. Also, it depends upon how the prosecution strategizes the leading of evidence in a criminal trial. And ultimately, it is the decision of the trial judge whether to find it to be a case of murder or suicide. Now, there are subjective and objective elements that go through the mind of the judge before he finally decides such a criminal trial.
With this, it's a wrap on this edition of 7 Minutes with Vivek.